Just looking at the latest developments following this resignation, we had the press briefing by Supra Mahumapelo being postponed, where we were expecting that he was going to sort of make it official from his side. Now we have the PEC calling this emergency meeting due to start at 8 o'clock. What do we read into all of this?
Well, Yuveka, we've got to take it back to Sunday morning. Last Sunday, the ANC held a PEC meeting in Hartbeespoort Dam, where the Premier of the province and ANC Provincial Chairman, Supra Mahumapelo, did confirm to the PEC that he is thinking and pondering about speaking to the nation on Tuesday. Obviously, Yuveka, that was dependent on the various negotiations and talks that were happening behind closed doors with the ANC's National Executive Committee and Top 6. You'd remember that Top 6 meeting that took place on Monday. And then yesterday's budget speech, where the Premier effectively signaled that he would be resigning by saying by Friday he will be sending a letter to the Speaker clearing the essence of the absence of the presence. So you can read in between the lines for yourself with that encrypted message what he was basically saying. And then minutes later or hours later, the ANC in the province issued out a statement saying they welcome the voluntary stepping down of the Premier of the province, and he is considering the province ahead of himself. So it's rather interesting now that the ANC has called a special PEC meeting to start at 8 at the embassy building today here in Mahikeng, and the Premier has cancelled his press briefing for 10 o'clock.
So what's the thinking around this, Samkele? And I know, we'll only know when we know and these meetings are over, but are we thinking that maybe all is not as it seems? Maybe there isn't quite a resignation, he's not going to go as easily as we thought? Or are we thinking this is a meeting to decide who takes over in the meantime in the province?
Well, I think Supra Mahumapelo's resignation is pretty much a done deal unless the ANC decides to mandash on their decision after they issued out that statement yesterday. In fact, it was issued out from the office of the acting secretary, provincial secretary, Susan Janji, who's also the speaker in the legislature, whom the letter of the resignation in governance was supposed to go to the speaker of the legislature, Susan Janji. And the Premier's resignation as well is supposed to be notified to the ANC's provincial secretary, acting secretary, Susan Janji. So it would be a matter of mandashing from the ANC's side. But what could happen is that the ANC may be deciding on who should take over. You'd remember that the likes of former Premier Thandi Modise, her name has been touted as a possible person who could take over in order to neutralize both warring factions in the province, so that not either faction has a premier, but it's someone neutral who won't be embedded within factions within the province. But you'd also remember Thandi Modise herself, after she left the province, we had the issue of her own pig farm coming up, where she basically left those pigs deserted and with nobody to take care of them in her own farm, which they ended up cannibalizing one another. So it's going to be interesting on how the African National Congress navigates through these waters that they find themselves in. But it's going to be interesting whether Supra Mahumapelo is indeed going or not. The ANC on his side, on their side, seem to have confirmed through that statement that they issued out last night. With this interesting development now of the postponement of the press briefing, is going to be interesting on what comes out of that ANC PEC meeting, which we will be certainly be camped outside and waiting for PEC members to go inside and throw questions at them.
All right, well, if nothing has changed since the ANC's announcement, then Samkele, we've been asking our viewers this morning, after weeks of calls for him to resign, after weeks of him saying, I'm not going anywhere, what do you think was the final push? We know that he met with the president last week. Even then, he seemed steadfast. It didn't seem like it was going to be sort of that meeting meant, yes, he's going to go. So what is the feeling out there? What is the talk about? What is it that has finally convinced Supra Mahumapelo to quit?
Well, Yuveka, let's take it back to this scenario of the former President Jacob Zuma. You'd remember that he was also in refusing to step down, saying he must be given 3 months so that he can be able to perform this transition from himself to Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, so that he can introduce him to BRICS and so forth. But then the ANC came out and said, we are calling a special NEC in Cape Town. if he does not voluntarily step down, we're going to recall him. And then we've got this scenario as well, where the African National Congress could have called a special National Executive Committee to effectively recall the Premier of the Northwest, because the final arbiter here and the final body that has a decision and that no ANC deployee can go against, unless some which may say they are ill-disciplined, will go against the decisions of the National Executive Committee and not abide by their decision. This time around, the NWC simply recommended that the Premier of the Northwest should step down and that President Cyril Ramaphosa must go and speak to him. So this time around, there was no special NEC that may have been called. If the Premier decides to refuse to step down, then the ANC may be forced to call a special National Executive Committee to basically enforce this decision, should the so-called faction that is led by Cyril Ramaphosa within that National Executive Committee have the upper hand against those who are sympathetic to Premier Supra Mahumapelo. So what may have forced him to resign here is that he may have simply not had the necessary numbers in the National Executive Committee for him to stay on as the Premier of the Northwest. You'd remember Supra Mahumapelo was one of those keepers of the former president of the country, President Jacob Zuma.
Well, just going back to that, and now that you mentioned him, Samkele, at the time also lots of suspicion when it came to the former president, and you would think that question marks hang over this resignation as well. Is there a deal that has been made? What is it that that they said to Supra Mahumapelo that has convinced him now to look like he's gone voluntarily?
Well, Iveka, if we go back to the after or just before the 2014 general elections, the ANC in the provinces had to submit 3 names of premier candidates. You'd remember that in Gauteng, Nomvula Mokonyane was number 4 within that list, and David Makura, if I'm not mistaken, was number 1. So Makura ended up being chosen as the premier candidate. In all other provinces, they sent 3 names of premier candidates, and then the ANC chooses. This time around, you can find that the ANC in the province has had to submit 3 names to the ANC's National Executive Committee for consideration for him or her to become the Premier of the Northwest. You remember that the likes of the current MEC of Finance in the province was a very close ally of Premier Supra Mahumapelo, has also been touted by the Supra Mahumapelo faction in the Northwest to take over from the Premier, who's also the desired person from the Premier's side. But then on this right-hand side, on this faction that is led by the likes of Madota Sambata, China Totovu, the former deputy chairman of the province, they want Thandi Modise, who can come in and neutralize the Northwest, so that she is not necessarily keen on any of the factions, and the ANC themselves may have been keen on Thandi Modise to neutralize the warring factions in the province and then to unite them. So those are the scenarios where you could find the ANC PEC meeting to decide on the 3 names that will be sent to the ANC's National Executive Committee when they meet to decide on who takes over, and the person that can unite the ANC caucus within the legislature. Yesterday, they had very few numbers in that caucus. They only had about 50% plus 1 in order to be able to pass the budget speech that was presented by the former premier now.
All right, and Samkele, you've been sort of camped out in the Northwest over the past couple of weeks. We saw the scenes there also when it came to residents, the community saying how, most of them saying how they don't want Supra Mahumapelo to be their premier anymore. What was the reaction when this news came out late yesterday?
I got a call from a few people who were trying to verify with me whether this information is true, that the Premier is packing his bags in the provincial office and Premier's office and is stepping down. They seemed rather jovial. I just simply said to them, well, a statement has been issued by the ANC saying he's stepping down, he's voluntarily stepped down, and he's addressing the media tomorrow at 10 o'clock. They seemed very happy. A few of the people we met on the streets were even asking and were even saying that we're on a go-slow now, we just want this man gone. So there are those who want the Premier gone, but obviously it's not a one-sided story where it's all the people of the Northwest who want him gone. There are those who still have confidence in Premier Supra Mahumapelo and want him to stay. So it's just a matter of the ANC playing their politics right, so that it does not impact on their fortunes of winning the 2019 general election in this province. You remember that they are already governing Rustenburg through a coalition, so it's going to be interesting on how the ANC navigates their politics going forward, and also trying to keep this public perception that they seem to be dealing with the cries of some community members.
All right, well, thanks very much, and sending a clear message to other provinces, no doubt, as well. eNCA's Samkele Maseko in Mahikeng for us this morning. Well,